Well, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you this evening to our October 3rd Hendersonville Regional Planning Commission meeting, and noting that all members are present with the exception of Ms. Stringfellow and Mr. Bristol. So we do have a quorum, and so we will continue on. The first thing we have on the agenda is public hearing. We have a public hearing tonight, request by Dharmesh Patel to rezone 2.79 acres identified as Sumner County Map 159E Group B Parcel 25, located on the east side of Carrington Road, south of East Main Street, to rezone from general commercial GC to multifamily residential MFR. We have one speaker on this hearing, and that's Lisa Baez. I hope I pronounced that right. Lisa, are you here? Yes. Okay, would you please come? And if you would, just step up to this podium and identify yourself, and we'll be delighted to hear what you have to say.
Hi, I'm Lisa Baez, and I manage Marina Point Apartments that sits at the end of the cul-de-sac on Carrington Road. And I'm concerned greatly over the rezoning and adding more multifamily in the area. As you know, it's a dead-end road. It dead ends at Spring Haven. And on the complex that I manage, which is on the right side, I have 132 units out there. That's over 500 drivers, close to about 700 residents total just in that one little area. It's a 2-lane road. The apartment community that is on the left side that has an entrance on Carrington, they also have over 100 units. And I would imagine just as many neighbors in that little community as well. The concerns that I have is both communities experience a lot of flooding and heavy rains due to the building that's been around there and the subdivision that borders the community Marina Point on its right side. I'm also concerned with the rezoning with the schools, with adding in more families. I don't know much about the rezoning request and what their intentions are with the property, what level of multifamily. But it does concern me greatly. The amount of traffic getting out of that one little road right there has caused several major accidents. There's not a stoplight in that area, and when folks come down the hill off of Main Street, they're definitely doing in excess of the speed limit. Our law enforcement officers do tend to sit in that little area to try to help control that, but there is a lot of potential for accidents right there. If something is done with that little piece of land right there, as far as multifamily, I would hope it would be considered that a light would be put in there to help ease a lot of the congestion. And those are some of my concerns. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much. That was the only person signed up for that hearing, so we'll declare that hearing closed. Move on to request for information and assistance. Does anybody have any? Okay. Additions to the agenda? Hearing none. We've got minutes of September 5th, 2017. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Pinson, second by Mr. Millsap. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Consent agenda items. We have Durham Farm Phase 2. I'll not read everything. They agree with all comments. Durham Phase 2, Section 27, they agree. Savannah Phase 6, Section 3, agree. Meadows of Indian Lake, Phase 6, they agree. And Skins Solutions Dermatology, Site Plan Renewal, of course, Hendersonville Utility District, and they agree. Do we need a motion on that? Move to group. We have moved to group and approve. We have a second on that? Mr. Millsap? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Any opposed? Carries. Final plats. We have one which has been withdrawn by the applicant, Harry Hanna. So we'll take that one off. And now we move to Lakeside Park Section 10 resub lots 137, 138. They have agreed to all staff comments. Who is handling this one?
This one will be Lakeside Park. I believe that's Suzanne. Suzanne's got that one.
Okay, Suzanne, if you please.
So this was a re-subdivision. It's currently platted for 2 lots, and they are re-subdividing, requesting for 3 lots. It meets the lot, we did the lot compatibility, and it, with the resubmittal, it meets the lot compatibility. And I think there was some concern about maybe the slope of the lot and maybe the drainage. So before any building permits are issued, Public Works is also going to sign off and review the zoning permit before the building permit gets issued.
Is anybody here from Lakeside Park at all? Okay, you agree with everything, Bruce? Everything's okay? All right. All right, do we have a motion?
I have a question.
Okay, Ms. Petrelli?
Thank you. So like Suzanne said, I did have a conversation with Chip Moore, our Public Works Director. I do have some concerns about drainage in this area. My understanding and having eyed it in this area is that there are houses that currently have drainage issues. And I do know that where the market is located across the street, Curtis Crossroads, and 2 lots down, we've got a failed culvert where it winds up flooding the house. So all of this water, as the property continues to be developed, once you get the land disturbance permit, if that comes to that, the drainage coming off of this property is going to be tremendous, potentially.
Let's allow Rainey to speak on that. Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Can you answer any of Ms. Petrelli's questions there about the drainage?
The one thing that about the drainage, the reason we did the lots the way we did, they are basically in keeping with the original design. I did add 1 lot. My owner is trying to sell it without adding that lot. But you know, we're leaving that option open. I don't feel that the increase in runoff is going to be substantial enough to be a problem. We've tried to, in fact, we've cleared the land, didn't bulldoze it. We cleared it with a mulcher for the most part, and for the very reasons you're talking about. I just, on this small deal, I just don't see that it's going to have any significant impact at all. These 3 lots won't for sure. Because if I remember correctly, the pipe size for that, I've already got it approved, is a 48-inch pipe, which is a huge volume of water. And, you know, it's what we're doing, you would not be able to tell it really in the pipe.
Okay, so you've got the culverts running through these 3 properties, and how, does it extend all the way to Curtis Crossroad, or
We're just putting in.
just on those properties?
Just driveway culverts, that's all.
And it
Pass
hooks,
through. In fact, we're putting in 2, because I'm going to do a joint driveway on one of them.
okay. The property behind it, it's undeveloped, correct?
Yes.
Is that the same owner that owns these
It
3
is the
lots?
same owner. I am currently working on a plan on that, but it is also going to be a large lot development, not a small lot development. By large lot, in keeping with what I have in front of you now, or larger.
Are larger than what will be in the future development?
Yes, we're not looking at, there was a plan several years ago on this property that created, I don't know, 25 or 30 lots. We're not adhering to that at all. We're going with much larger lots
Okay.
and keeping with the R15 and larger.
Okay. So just so that I'm clear, there will have to be permits issued from Public Works.
Suzanne?
When before we issue building permits, they have to get zoning permits. And then when they get the zoning permits, we'll get with Public Works and make sure that they're good with everything before we issue zoning permits. You need a zoning permit to get a building permit.
Do you happen to know what the grade percentage is for a driveway off the top of your head? If you don't worry about it.
Great
Say your
percentage
name.
for
Like,
driveway.
how high, what's the steepest a driveway can be?
From the edge of pavement, it should not exceed 10% in the first 15 feet. That's all that we have in our subdivision regulations.
Okay, first 15 feet. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Rainey.
all right. Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion to, Mr. Lee?
I move that we approve.
Got a motion to approve, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Atchley. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Opposed? Okay, we have one opposed, Ms. Petrelli. Okay, we move now to preliminary and final development plans. We've got Jack Alexander, PDP revision of Lot 2. Anybody here from that? Okay, and who's handling this one?
Mr. Whitten.
Mr. Whitten.
This Harry Hannah did. I won't go back over the staff report that y'all saw last time, except to remind you that this is an amendment to the Jack Alexander PD, which consists of 2 lots, which are currently zoned office PD. The applicant is requesting for one of those lots to go to GC PD. The uses are the same as are currently on the PD, except that they're asking to add the use of an internal access self-storage facility. That's the only use being added per this amendment. This was deferred from the last planning commission meeting so that the applicant could get with the neighbors, which I believe that meeting did happen. My understanding is there wasn't really any difference. Their opinions are all the same. Nothing's really changed. But Mr. Williams can fill you in on the results of that meeting. The plan that's before you is the same as the one that you saw last time. There has been one change that cropped up in the last 24 hours, and that is the applicants in trying to resolve the fire department's issues determined that they would need to reduce the building footprint, going from 32,000 square feet to, I believe it was 24,000. And to make up the building square footage, they need to increase the allowed building height from 35 feet, which is what the current master plan limits it to go to 40 feet, which would allow them to do a 3-story facility instead of a 2-story facility. Now, the gross building square footage, I think, is that going to be capped at 72,000? So gross building square footage stays the same. Building footprint is smaller. It goes up by 1 story to 40 feet, 3 stories. They are requesting that amendment to the PD tonight. And there's one other item to mention, that is, this got left off of my staff comments, but the Planning Commission, in making your determination, if you pass that down, in making your determination, need to make specific findings of fact in your motion addressing these 4 criteria. The last criteria, item D, has to do with the land use plan. The land use plan for this amendment is in compliance with the land use plan, so there's no amendment required to that. But the other 3 items, you do need to make specific findings of fact in your motion.
Why Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself one more time and address the Planning Commission, and then we'll ask questions.
Okay, my name's Don Williams. I'm with Gresham Smith and Partners. We're an architecture and engineering firm in Nashville. I'm here tonight representing the Natchez Group and my client Bo Fowler. And as Timothy has described for you, we've got a request to allow a self-storage facility to be installed on this property. We've got a rendering here that gives you an idea of what the building will look like. It's designed to look like an office building. All of the entrances to the storage facilities are from the interior of the office building. There's been a lot of change in the self-storage business in recent years. There's been a huge increase in the demand for self-storage that is predominantly a result of living spaces becoming smaller, people having smaller lots, smaller home, less place on their property to keep their things, and more of a need for self-storage. So that business is doing extremely well. I know you can't believe everything you read on the internet, but it says that there are more self-storage facilities in America than there are McDonald's. So that gives you some idea of how big this business is. We've laid the site out as Timothy described. Our initial plan was to have a two-story, 72,000 square foot building. The comments we received from the fire marshal, as I mentioned last month when we were here, we can accommodate those. We understand his position. We need to have an access road all the way around the building on the site. So we need to shrink that footprint to give us room for that access building. We can do that and have a 27,500 square foot footprint, two-story building with 55,000 square feet. In reviewing your ordinance and what we're trying to accomplish, it occurred to us that another option that might be more desirable is to reduce that footprint even more, down to 24,000 square feet, and have it 3 stories. That allows us to have a much greater setback from the rear property line. We could put the building 75 feet from the rear property line and put a substantial evergreen buffer back there to screen us from the neighborhood. We're looking for solutions that would satisfy the neighbors. This building will have the parking in the front with no parking behind except for the fire department access road. It's climate controlled. It has security cameras and computerized entry controls. So if you go into this facility, it's recorded. We know who goes in and goes out. You can't get access to your unit without us knowing. And there's 24-hour video surveillance. On some other projects that I've worked on, the neighborhood was tickled to death about the level of security that this type of facility will provide for the neighborhood, and they saw that as an asset. Bo met with the neighbors, I believe, on September 27th and tried to discuss with them, tried to understand what the objections were to this project. The items that I understand that were listed is not knowing what might be stored there, a concern that there might be some chemicals or that somebody might be cooking meth in one of these storage units, some type of illegal activity that could go on. Again, all I can tell you is that it's got cameras, it's got computerized control, it's got a security guard there during the day, and we know who comes and who leaves. The other item that the neighbors said is that they're just against any rezoning of this property. I understand this property has been zoned this way for 30 years. 30 years ago, there weren't any personal computers. 15 years ago, very few residents had internet connections, and 11 years ago, the iPhone was just being introduced. So these types of facilities didn't even exist 30 years ago when this zoning was placed on this property. I've also talked with a number of real estate representatives, the ones that are representing the property next to this, and right now there's just no market for office buildings on this property. We think we've got a use that's compatible with the neighborhood and that would be an asset to the community, and we request your approval for this zoning. I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Okay, let me go back now. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you are proposing to reduce the footprint 24,000 feet, 3 levels, which would be 40 feet high. Am I correct?
We
hold on. Go ahead.
We're willing to reduce the footprint to 27,500 and have it 2 stories, or reduce it even further to 24,000 and have 3 stories. Either one of those options works for us, and we're happy to work with the community, with the neighborhood, with the planning department as we go through the final plan development to select which one of those options works best for the community.
Okay, so at 27.5, the height would be what it is proposed to be right now?
It would be no more than 35.
No more 35. If we go to 24,000, third level would go to
We would need 40.
40. Okay.
But I would also tell you that our floor elevation is about 4 feet lower than the ground elevation at our rear property line. We would also, under that scenario, have the building 75 feet away from the rear property line. There's parts of your ordinance that speak about a slope plane, 1 horizontal to a half a foot vertical. We think we could comply with those provisions, and we think that that's maybe the best option. We think it would be the best option for us. It would be our preference to go 24,000 square feet, 40-foot maximum height.
Okay. So with this, everything that the fire department has listed here as conditions, you would agree with?
Yes, sir.
And it would be just a matter of preference on whether it would be 27.5 or 24,000?
That's correct.
27.5 at 2 level, 24,000 at 3.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And I will open it up for any other commissioners that have questions. Now, let me just ask one question of Mr. Free. This is an amendment to the land use plan, am I correct?
No, this one wouldn't need an amendment to the land
It
use
would
plan.
need an amendment.
No, this is good. It meets the land use plan, is that correct, Tim? Yeah.
Okay, so as far as uses are concerned, we're okay?
Yeah, we're okay with it. It's just a matter of whether you amend this final development, preliminary development plan or not.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, I thought that was the case, just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that was what was the rendering,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anybody have any questions for the applicant here? Mr. Lee?
Yes. One concern that I have is a 3-story building versus a 2-story building to keep more in line with what we see on West Main Street. I have in the past been opposed to self-storage facilities because they don't employ a lot of people. But I do understand that there is a growing need for that, and that this particular plan that I'm looking at here, I mean, I don't know what the 3-story plan would look like. If we had that, maybe I would have a different opinion. But this is very attractive in business looking like. And it appears to me, first of all, I want to say this. I commend you for the meeting with the residents, and I appreciate the fact at the last meeting that you voluntarily withdrew your submittal in order for a meeting to be held and where you could discuss some of the issues. Now, I do understand we can't always resolve all of the issues, but at least from the report that you made, that there was a good faith meeting, that you could hear about what some of the issues are, and that you could address those as much as possible with the purpose that you want to do. I'm just having a hard time conceptualizing 3-story versus 2-story, although the total height is not that much different.
You need to sit down, sir, please. You need to sit down. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Lee. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I have a
Any other-
question.
Mr. Pinson?
Just quickly, when you had the conversation with the neighbors, did you bring up the 3-story scenario
I don't
with them at
believe
all?
that was discussed with the neighbors. No, sir.
Okay. My other quick question is, how many people are going to be employed in this facility?
There's a security person there when it's open during the day, just one person.
So,
The total number of employees is probably less than half a dozen.
okay.
Ms. Atchell?
I just had a question, since there was concern about the contents. Does anyone review the security tapes for what's actually being put in the facilities, or do you have access to the units to inspect them?
Well, I don't know about access to the units. Absolutely, the the computer tapes are monitored to see who's come in, and there's certain triggers to show if somebody's coming in quite frequently, that'll get attention. The other thing is there's a contract that's written up. This is to protect the owners and operators of the facility as well as the public, and that contract limits the materials that can be stored there, and anybody in violation of the contract, there's repercussions for that. So, yeah.
Well, I understand that, but if someone's not complying with the contract, if they're cooking meth or bringing things in, I mean, that seems to be a main concern of the homeowners. That's why I was asking, is that monitored?
If there was anything illegal that we discovered, we would report it immediately to the police. Typically, on something like this, anything that's illegal obviously is prohibited by the contract. If we find it, we're going to report it. If it's not illegal and it's just against the rules, then those complete regulations haven't been developed for this facility. But typically, you would have authority to terminate the contract with somebody who broke the contract.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Lee in that I like the two-story better just because the banks that are on that road are one-stories.
Right.
Maybe with a dormer or something like that. But I would highly recommend that, and I love the building, it's beautiful. But if that's a concern, and we know people that are rule breakers just break the rules. I mean, they don't care what the contract says, and I think
Right.
that's a legitimate concern. I used a storage unit one time, and it was crazy, some of the stuff that people brought in and out. But I think if it's monitored and you can monitor the usage, because normally storage is storage, you don't have somebody coming in there 5 times a day. And I would just highly recommend that as part of your policy or your contract, that be addressed in terms of if you see, what does not appear to be normal use, that would be monitored. I think that would make the neighbors feel better.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Petrelli?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So in reducing the overall footprint, you're only adding 5 feet height, an additional 5 feet.
Correct.
Correct. So are you just reducing your overall ceiling heights? Because, 5 feet obviously isn't going to give you a floor.
Right, and we don't need the full 35 feet for a 2-story. But we could do a 3-story in 40, and the 35-foot height limitation is the current limitation. We would be well under that with a 2-story. We could do a 3-story in 40 feet.
Okay. And would it just essentially be an extension, looking at your elevation, would you literally just be kind of pulling everything up 5 feet, extending the windows, extending your facade? Or do you see like a break?
This is a conceptual rendering of what the facility is going to look like.
Sure.
When we get into the massing and the height as we develop those further. But generally, what we're going to do is take a 24,000 square foot footprint and repeat it 3 times. And, you're going to have a floor-to-floor height of at least 10 feet, and you're going to be able to get that in a 40-foot height limitation.
Sure, I understand that. I was just trying to get a gauge for the facade of the building. If you literally were just going to kind of extend.
The same
what-
materials all the way up to the 3rd floor? That
Correct.
would be the intent, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, the building that we're looking at here, what is the height of that building?
This was designed for the 2-story building.
Yes.
And the specific height on this is probably in the neighborhood of 24 to 28 feet.
Yeah, so, the fact that we're going to 40 is not that we're just adding 5 feet to this, we're adding 15 or 20 feet to that to get what we're looking for.
I would mention, and I will go to Mr. Whitten next, but I would mention, in keeping, I think Ms. Ashley alluded to this, but in keeping with the buildings that are adjacent, that the shorter heights would be better. I think it would look better if we should approve something like this for that piece of property than going up 40 feet. I'm not sure that would be a wise course of action, although, my question is with the 2-story, you still can meet all the fire department requirements.
Yes, we've got a sketch that shows that. We look forward to working with the fire marshal to make sure that we comply with what he needs.
Okay, Mr. Whitten.
I just wanted to point out that you will have an opportunity to look at this again, if this is approved, with the final development plan, and then in real detail with the site plan. This is just a just to give a general design intent. So.
Okay. Ms. McCormick?
What does the rear of the building look like? As well as I see in your rendering, and I know it's a rendering, but there are some very mature-looking trees behind that that are peering above that building. Are they already existing there?
There are some existing trees behind the building, and there will be more that will be added with the landscaping that we'll install.
Are there windows, and is the rendering very similar to the
The
front?
full elevations have not been developed. Exactly where the access doors are and where the windows are has not been developed. But we would work with planning staff and the neighbors on those issues and through the final plan approval to try and be responsive to any concerns about the rear elevation. I would imagine that we would need an access door on the back of this to meet fire codes. An emergency access door, not one that can be entered any other way.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Does Fire Marshal have any comments real quick? Are you okay?
I understand that you're willing to work with us, but we haven't seen his new proposal. I'm sure we can take a look at that and see. Like you said, the back door probably would be required for emergency access. And we just look forward to seeing his proposal.
Okay. All right, so the question before us is essentially, do we want to approve a storage facility on this property? And with regard to the height and with regard to the size, as Mr. Whitten has said, I think we're going to see this stuff again, and I certainly would yield to Mr. Free to help me with this, but I'm not sure it's this commission's purpose to sit here and decide how big a building's going to be right now at this point. But if we need to, we can. So.
Yeah. There's going to be another opportunity to look in detail, especially on the site plan, but then even on the final development plan, to look at this more intently. I believe the issue on the height, and Mr. Whitten can tell me if this is correct, the issue with the height is something that we need to address. Not with that height would need to be, if this is approved, that height extension would need to be noted as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so,
That's an amendment that needs to be addressed tonight.
yeah.
The
So,
maximum height that will be allowed.
Okay. Well, that's what I was trying to get at. So the height is important for
Yes.
tonight.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any other questions or motions? Ms.
I
Benson?
got another quick question, and I should have asked this before, but what's going to be the size of the individual units within this property, and how are oversized objects that are going to be stored in there going to be able to get into there?
Typically, there's a variety of different sizes. You can purchase a different size unit like you would do a one-bedroom, two-bedroom, or three-bedroom apartment. How do you get oversized items in there? I think most of the oversized units would be on the first floor and provide access that way.
I mean, but are you going to have a garage door, or are you going to have a...
Typically, there are garage doors for access to this, but again, we haven't completely designed this facility. We were hoping that we could get approval of this use and
So
then...
you don't know if there's going to be, there may or may not be garage doors on this, and garage doors are not allowed to face the front for sure,
Right.
but you don't know that yet.
We won't have any on the front if they're not allowed, I know that.
Well, they're not, so...
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Whitten, do you have anything else?
Yes, that does come as a surprise to me. The use that's being added is for interior access, self-storage, and that was my understanding. So if
Right.
that's different, that needs to be,
No, all the units are
Hashtag.
accessed from the interior of the
Okay.
building. The garage door would be to allow any larger equipment to be brought into
Right,
the
okay.
interior,
okay.
not to the units.
Okay. All right, well, we need to make some decisions here. Let's look at this piece of, this document that's been handed out, Planning Commission in its review and recommendation and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in Boma in its deliberation shall make specific findings in regard to the following grounds for an amendment to the change of existing zoning classification. Zone change amendment is in agreement with the land use plan, okay? There will be no adverse effect upon adjoining property owners, such as an effect that can be justified by an overwhelming public good or welfare. No property owner or small group of property owners will benefit materially, and of course, conditions affecting the area have changed to a sufficient extent to warrant an amendment to the area's land use plan and subsequently the zoning map. The only thing that I see here, and I like the plan, I like the building, just as one commissioner speaking, I don't know that for what will happen with this property, and I know the applicant has stated that it's not been developed in 30 years, and while that's a fact, that surely is a fact, that does not dictate the future at all, and especially in this upmarket. There are many uses that could land on this property, and that could be within keeping of the adjacent properties around us, given the fact that the meeting that was held with the residents, I just don't think that they were too happy with this, although given that, I would be fair and say I'm not sure they'd be happy with any of them. I'm not really sure. I don't have that answer. But just from my point of view as one commissioner, and I rarely do this, but I'm going to do it on this one, I would have to say that I would be inclined not to vote for it. So I'll speak. Any other commissioners have a question or a motion or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm just one person. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this use, that it complies with items 1A through D, as has been explained to us, that you just read. I want a two-story maximum height of 28 feet to comply with all staff comments, approval of the fire marshal, and approval when you submit the actual renderings, architectural renderings. That's my motion.
We have a motion and a second. Second. Motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Foreman.
I guess it's mostly a request for Ms. Ashley to articulate through factual finding why you deduce that it fits through A through D.
Well, I believe Mr. Whitten explained that it already complied with D. Because I understood that. Was that correct?
A.
I thought he said D.
Well, it does comply with the land use plan.
Right. No, D is the conditions affecting the area have changed to a sufficient extent to warrant an amendment to the area's land use plan.
Well, there is no change required.
Right. So that one was already a check. So then that kind of takes care of A, which it's in agreement with the land use plan. B, I don't see any adverse effect adjoining property owners. Kroger came in there and bought Kmart. They completely redid it. They tore down the Burger King. You've got two relatively new banks. I mean, it's a commercial strip on Gallatin Road. So I don't see that. And I don't see that any property owner or small group of property owners will benefit materially or to the detriment of the general public. I mean, it's a commercial area. Those were my findings.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ashley.
Yes, sir.
Call for the question, Mr. Chairman.
We got a call for the question. All in favor of Ms. Ashley's motion, properly seconded, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Or no?
No.
Okay, so let's take a hand vote here. Okay, all in favor of Ms. Ashley's motion, please raise your right hand. Got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All opposed, same sign. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a tie. So, all right, it fails. Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Millsap.
Mr. Millsap was the second on Ms. Ashley's motion. There you go. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on the agenda, we've got site plan. We move up now to Waterford Village. And who's speaking to that?
I will be speaking to that.
Okay, Mr. Free.
Okay. Waterford Village, this is Phase 4 of Waterford Village. If you remember several months ago, Phases 1 through 3 were approved. And the applicant is Randy Chastain with Parkside Builders. And they're proposing to develop on this 6.09 acres to construct a 63-unit condominium in a horizontal property regime, similar to what was done with Waterford Village Phases 1 through 3. Architecturally, they're looking to do the same type of units and same mix that they had in Phases 1 through 3. Again, this will be a horizontal property regime. So it won't be divided into individual lots. It would be done through a condominium type of development, and it's a mix of. It has 20 single-family cottages and 43 townhomes that are distributed throughout. And I think everybody has the kind of the plan and everything that's associated with that. And this is a site plan. So what happens is this isn't a rezoning. The property's already properly zoned. What we're doing is with the horizontal property regimes, we're treating those as multifamily developments and requiring a site plan. So what you have before you tonight is the site plan for this proposed development.
Mr. Free, would you just explain horizontal property regime for everybody, please?
Yeah. What it is typically in a subdivision or in a development, you would have individual lots where you'd have your own, 75 by 150-foot lot, and it would be your own deeded lot that you'd build a house on. Horizontal property regimes, they have a lot of common area, so the bulk of the area that on the sides of houses and fronts and common open spaces, it's all considered common areas, and then you actually only own the pad that your property sits on. There are exclusive things where you actually park that could be exclusive. They're still common areas, but they're exclusive common areas that are only utilized by the person whose house is right there in front. So that's sort of how it's laid out. We haven't had a whole lot of these done here in Hendersonville on a large scale, but the Waterford Village was one of the first ones. They do a lot of this in Davidson County.
Okay. All right, who is speaking for George? Introduce yourself and you.
George Welch with Reagan Smith, representing Parkside Builders. We have the staff comments and in agreement with all the staff comments and would ask for your approval. Be welcome to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead. You're on. No.
Okay, so just to clarify, it says that they do agree now with all staff comments? Okay, so
Yes.
the previous disagreement with planning comment 2 is not there?
We've worked that out. We talked with
Okay.
staff before.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Mr. Lee,
Planning comment 2 and Public Works comment 1?
they agree with.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Lee.
I was just wanting to make sure that the payment required for the road improvements had been agreed to
Yeah.
in both areas, and that it all has been agreed to.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion?
If such payments required. Yeah, if such payments required, yeah.
Yeah, if
Chairman,
such
I
payment is
move-
required. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
if it is, then it would be, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve.
Okay, Mr. Lee moves it. So we got a second. Mr. Pinson, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? It passes.
Thank you.
There are no sketch plats, no preliminary plats. We have the rezoning quest now that comes up to 152 Carrington Road. And once again, in going back to the hearing that this is a request of a piece of property that's directly behind the Sonic there on Main Street, and everything else is zone MFR. I understand that there are, how many lots proposed in here, Mr. Free?
This also would be a horizontal property regime, similar to Waterford Village. Of course, we've got to remember that, like I had in my staff comments, that this is a rezoning, so it's not a planned development rezoning. So if you approved it to multifamily, the applicant's going to speak to what their intent is with the property, but they're not held to that. They could still develop it, whatever would be allowed within the multifamily. So this is looking at one lot. And you can see, I might note, there is another rezoning request that they have just submitted in our office this week that'll come before this body next month for a little piece that they're also acquiring with this. And it's in that third page, and it's kind of a blue dashed outline that shows that. But the developer is looking to rezone the property to eventually look at constructing 16 single-family homes. And the developer can probably speak more detail concerning what their intentions are.
Okay, do we have the developer here? Please. If you would, just introduce yourself and...
May I hand some materials?
Sure. Very good. Well, they'll pass those down for us. Thank you.
I'm Jack Campbell. I'm appearing on behalf of Creedley Incorporated. We're the developer, and the petitioner for the zoning change is our president, Dharmesh Patel, named Dean Patel, who's a developer out of Nashville. And I apologize. These materials were at a printer on the way in, and they hadn't printed them, so I was a little late. I actually have a letter that Mr. Bill Sinks, who's the major adjacent property owner, asked me if I could read here, and I've given Lauren a copy of it. And no, it's not public comment, but may I do that?
We would have to have a motion. Excuse me. We'd have to have a motion to suspend the rules to let him read this comment. We have a motion from the commissioners. So move. Okay. Second. Okay. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear Planning Commission, please accept my apology for not attending this meeting, but I have a prior engagement of a son with a birthday Tuesday. Let me just say for the record that I am extremely excited with the land use Creedley and Mr. Patel have for the land located behind my properties of Bluegrass Beverages and the 557 building. Historically, the land use has been either more apartments, storage units, or an office building. I don't want any more apartments or storage units. Creedley has put together a first-class home development utilizing energy efficiency, styling, convenience, and is fulfilling a huge need for Hendersonvillians. 16 top-notch homes with beautiful landscaping is a perfect application for this location. I hope you guys feel this way also and stand to approve Creedley's plan. Regardless, Bill Sinks. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions by commissioners? I'll start the ball rolling. I see a picture here. I'm assuming that there will be 16 homes that will essentially look alike.
If you may, I'll just background this a little bit.
Okay.
This is kind of an historic thing. We've been working for years on a plan for what we hope to be a national builder that focuses on extremely high-performance, state-of-the-art homes with luxury pricing at this point. We eventually hope to work on the pricing to get it down. The houses that you're looking at there are, I don't want to go into massive detail, but...
Might help us, though.
It would. Nobody. Well, they are to a certain demographic.
It's not a mind bender right here, you know.
Okay. These houses are designed for affluent move-down buyers, affluent millennial purchasers, mid-career professionals that have very little interest in the outside of their home, are very interested in a convenient lifestyle near a major thoroughfare, and zero maintenance with a home. These are people that definitely don't want to cut their yards. And this house is, well, let me just list a few things. It's Miami-Dade Hurricane certified. It is this community will be the first and only LEED Platinum certified community in the state of Tennessee. They're individual commercial structures, and there's a couple of houses, but there's not a neighborhood that's platinum certified.
What are we looking in terms of materials? I know that we were just a little bit, but if we go down this road and rezone, what are you talking about here?
The walls and the roof are prefabricated masonry that include foam insulation structures built into the inside of the panel.
So they're pre-manufactured homes?
No, many of the exterior structural pieces are manufactured off-site.
Okay.
And then brought in and assembled on site. Just as a guide, the expected selling price is $369,000 per unit, which would make them among the most expensive properties on a per square foot basis that I've sold, something approaching $300 a square foot. So it's definitely a unique market. We're right across the street from the Yacht and Golf Club, and we're already getting inquiries for the houses when we haven't got them started yet.
Yeah.
So I don't want to focus so much on that because there's a whole process that obviously when we go through. Step one, and part of our thing is that we really want to work closely with bodies like this one, starting here in Hendersonville. So we're going to be really easy to get along with.
Okay. Ms. Petrelli.
Thank you, Chairman. So I have a question for Keith. So this is not large enough for a planned development. And you said 16 units, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So 16 units, according to my math, is 7,600 square foot lots. So, I mean, is there not a middle range here? And I'm going to use some really crude language, but I feel like we're stuffing the sausage again by cramming this many parcels, this many houses onto a property. I mean, that's a lot of density in that one particular area, and everybody's aesthetics are different, so I don't mean anything rude by this, because I bring up aesthetics a lot in Hendersonville.
Yeah.
But, I mean, is this the aesthetics that you're planning to go with?
Yes, ma'am. And specifically and very pointedly for market acceptance. That's what our customers want.
And, okay, so, these prefab exterior pieces, so like, it concerns me, the aesthetics concern me. We've got plenty of 8,000 square foot lots in Hendersonville at this point. I've had people reach out to me with a mindset of, we're running out of larger lots. I realize that this isn't zoned for that, so I'm speaking in theory. But this does concern me. I mean, like, is there a way to reduce the number of houses on this piece of property?
Well, the key thing to remember on this is that even as the applicant is saying this is what they're going to do, and even if it was something we fully embraced, and rezoning it to multifamily doesn't commit them to doing that. And just like the concept that the applicant has, it hasn't been through site plan, and we haven't really, other than just the sketch, we haven't reviewed that or anything with that. With the multifamily designation, then the number of units that you could put on that lot couldn't exceed 15 units an acre, but then it's less for townhomes and single-family homes within the multifamily zone. So it's totally different. I don't have that right in front of me, but it's substantially different if you're doing single-family within a multifamily zone, it's, the lot size is extremely small, could be extremely small.
If I could say something. Our understanding is from working from the MFR guidelines in your code, is that a minimum 50 by 100 foot lot per house, a minimum of 6 foot per side house to yard clearance, and a maximum footprint for the house of 40% of the property. And those are the way the MFR addresses single-family residence is significantly different from the other zonings in that it doesn't speak to X units per acre or X units per any other metric. It's on a lot-by-lot basis. So the property the plan that you have in front of you has been prepared by our team to exactly meet the MFR code zone.
And it is 5,000 square foot for single family, and I think it's 2,500 square foot for townhomes on that, what that average lot, or not the average, what the minimum lot size, could be for that.
So the question then being that even, of course, it hadn't gone through the process, but just on the overview, they would probably meet the guidelines for the 2.79 acres with the numbers of lots they're proposing.
Yes, it just conceptually, it looks like it would work in a multifamily residential zone. Of course, I will give a caveat that, once we look at it, he may not be able to get the number of units that you're calculating here. I mean, that's a possibility once we start that actual review
Understood.
process of a real
Potentially,
plan.
there are issues with issues with easements and with wastewater and all kinds of things, that haven't been addressed at this point, and we'll accommodate all of that
Right.
when the time comes.
Mr. Whitten, did you have a comment at all?
No.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. Do we have a motion of any sort to rezone this property on Carrington Road, 152 Carrington? Need some motion. You do something.
Well, just to comment, Mr. Chairman, I guess, I'm not that familiar with the type of development that's sort of being proposed here. I mean, I do have some concern that it's a little out of character of our city and that general area, particularly with the historic property that is located very near there. I don't know if we had some additional information or some more time that maybe we could make a better informed decision for this. Maybe we could defer action on this and give the developer an opportunity for us to look at this sort of model. I think it's wrong for us to approve the zoning change and then have hang-ups on the plan that you submit if the plan's going to look like this. So, we need to, we don't want to mislead you. So maybe if we had some additional information, we could make a better decision.
And speaking to that too, obviously if you look at the zoning map as it lays out, everything else around there is MFR. Of course, you got GC up on the main road. But Mr. Lee makes a valid point, and it is a new product. We really don't have a whole lot of information here. All of that would be coming. And then, of course, the issues that were brought up at the public hearing about the traffic concerns. Can you speak to that at all?
I'll try to be really serious when I say this, but it's 16 houses with 1 or 2 occupants per house. That's my answer. I don't understand that objection.
So it's going to be
in front of an apartment
insignificant.
complex with hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would say that the zoning request itself for that piece of property is not uncharacteristic because that's what's around it. No single-family homes are going to build there. The possibility of GC coming behind that, but I do take Mr. Lee's comments. Yeah, I think it's a new product and there's a lot of unknowns, but whatever this commission decides. Mr. Free.
Yeah, I might should speak to this. One thing is that if this was approved, then it still would have to go through a site plan process. Now, knowing that the site plan process, there'll be some give and take on visually what this looks like, but not in a lot amount. We don't, because it's straight zoning, there wouldn't be a lot of leverage. There'd just be some minimum, layout and things like that. So there would be very limited what we could do with it. I think through this, since it's not planned development, it's just a rezoning request, that tying what development they're going to do should maybe be put to the side of it, and just looking whether the rezoning from the current zoning to multifamily residential, whether that is, something that's supported or not supported by those, just like we did earlier in my staff comments, it's got, the findings of fact to look at. Really, I think those are the things to look at, with this, because it wouldn't, it's just a straight zoning thing, where that even if they presented something that we really, really liked right now, that they're not held to that. If that kind of helps the commission in looking at this particular issue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Free. Okay. Ms. McCormick.
So hypothetically, I guess this question goes back to Mr. Free. In the event that we decided to approve the zoning change to MFR, and the developer subsequently decided, I've changed my mind. And at that point, we have now changed the zoning to MFR. And what all could that, I guess I'm looking for the ramifications, or what are the possibilities of what could be put on this property with the zoning of that we've changed to MFR, in the event that the developer has changed his mind, since we are not bound by a planned development.
Probably, and just talking generally, probably with this particular piece of property, could be a 28, 30 unit apartment complex, could be, depending on the layout and the site and everything. Also could be possibly 22 to 25 townhomes, similar to what he's got, but just picture pushing them together, and you probably get 22 or 25. So that's what, could be done in the multifamily zone. And again, all of those would have to also come back through with the site plan, and, we would look at the different things of how it's laid out, and what we could impact on how it looks. We would impact that with our design review process. And there's issues with our design review process that this would have to go through. So some of the things, we've talked with this with the applicant, that there could be some things we require as far as brick or different things, through that process. One other thing that I definitely need to mention, and highlight, that was in in my staff comments, is that if this is approved, then an amendment to the land use plan needs to happen. It's a slight one, but where our future land use plan has this going, you can see it on one of my drawings, that would need to be moved if this was approved. And then, looking at those findings of fact on making any motion.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I'll give you one more chance here, but I think we've probably heard, but I want to hear one more time. Go ahead.
I just want to emphasize that this is a major effort by a significant group of us. I've lived in Hendersonville for 25 years, and I love it out here, and that it's my wife would never consider living anywhere else. So I'm personally sensitive to the neighborhood and the land use, and what it's like to drive around and see what's there. I personally chose this plot from about a dozen possibles around Hendersonville because it is sitting in a nest completely surrounded by And for two reasons. One, it's completely surrounded by commercial across the front and MFR around the back. And secondly, because it is in an enclave there, it's completely hidden away. And I thought, what a wonderful place to do something forward-thinking and modern. And that's what we're doing. I'd appreciate it if you'd let us get started with just the zoning approval, then we'll run with it from there. Thank you.
Okay, Commission, what's your pleasure? What would you like to do? Need a motion? Motion to approve? Motion recommend no approval? Or what's your pleasure? Oh, yeah, Mr.
Silence is deafening, Mr. Chairman. Many times I've made motions where I said to the chair that I'd like to test the will of the body, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I have no idea where this is going or how it's going to end up, but I want to move that this request to change the zoning standards at this property, it be approved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? Once again, the only discussion I would make on it is simply this. We do have a good staff that I believe would obviously guard the standards of our city well. We're talking about 16 houses here. It is in the nestles of MFR, and I do not feel like that this 2.79 acre lot. Now, I haven't seen, what's the acreage on the other one? Is it even a?
We're taking about 0.4 acres.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a sliver.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not going to make any difference whatsoever, so to speak. So I would be inclined to support the motion. Mr. McCormick.
So just to, I guess, address my opinion or concerns, I feel like it's not a far stretch to have a rezone to MFR, considering you have MFR to the south of the property. And the property is really small, so I'm not as concerned about the impact on traffic as much. I am concerned, and I actually very much so appreciate your forward thinking with all that you're offering in your interior. I like the fact that the property is for purchase, and that, I mean, as a homeowner, I can't imagine not having maintenance, et cetera. So for that, I'm quite jealous. But I will express my concern that your exterior is deeply concerning to me. It is just not an attractive product that I would want to see in the city, just being quite honest with you, based on the snapshot rendering that we have. My fear is that to comply with the rigorous standards that we have is potentially could make you say it's just not worth it, and that we've rezoned and it doesn't happen. So that's a concern for me, especially considering if I was told this was the rendering today, I could not support it, just to be quite honest with you. Just because aesthetically it is just that undesirable from my opinion. So just, I guess, just kind of putting it out there, I pray that staff can help develop something that is different from what's here. And, for that, I don't, approving the MFR is not a far stretch.
May I answer? Because it's really a really short answer.
Well, you know what?
We actually
we've got a motion and a second on the
Okay.
floor, so I'm not going to do
Okay.
that. I do say that, once again, okay, she's expressed her concerns, and we'll let the body will the body happen here, and then we'll go from there. One of the things that has come up, though, the maker of the motion, we also need to amend the land use plan. And so, I mean, you're a crackerjack parliamentarian. Can you amend your own motion?
Well, right now, because we're voting on a motion, the maker of the motion is
Yeah,
The only
got it.
one that can do
We
it.
had it, let me just go back. We haven't had a question called on this, so we're just in discussion, right?
right.
Okay, so, at this point, we need to, we're in discussion, so amendments can be offered,
Right,
right? So, yeah.
right. May I?
Yes,
Chair?
please.
I'd make a motion that we, in this particular matter, that we move to amend the future land use and transportation plan to move the site out of the suburban center character area and into the adjacent suburban living character area, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so this is an addendum to the motion that will be added, but this is an amendment to also amend the land use plan if
Yes.
this were approved. Do we have a second on the amendment? Mr. Lee, any discussion? All in favor say aye on the amendment? Aye. Any opposed? Ms. Petrelli? Okay, so that brings us back now to the main motion with, as amended. Is there any more discussion? Do I hear a call for the question? Question by Mr. Millsap. All in favor of approving this rezone request with the approved amendment that has been just voted upon to MFR with amending the land use plan? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no.
No.
One no. It's passed. Okay, we moved to staff-approved projects, which really need no vote, but Jamie Spurlock, final plat. Other, we have the resolution. You'll recall that last meeting, we talked about this at the end of our meeting about Glenbrook, and I am trying to find that resolution right now. Somebody can help me. But we have, you should have it before you. It's Resolution 2016-2008, or 08 rather. Resolution recommending acceptance of the dedication of the completed streets in Glenbrook Way Phase 1 minus the portion with pavers, Hendersonville, Sumner County, Tennessee. Whereas the developer of Sumner 2000 has formally requested the city of Hendersonville accept dedication of the completed streets in Glenbrook Way Phase 1. And whereas the street and drainage have been inspected by Public Works Director, City Engineer, and were found to meet all city specifications, therefore be it resolved that the Hendersonville Regional Planning Commission recommends to the Board, Mayor, and Aldermen of the City of Hendersonville, Sumner County, Tennessee, to accept dedication of the completed streets in Glenbrook Way Phase 1 minus the pavers, for which responsibility will be assumed by the property owner association should the pavers be removed and the road paved to city standards. The remaining portion shall be accepted at that time. All right? That'll be adopted this third day of October in Hendersonville, Sumner County, Tennessee, should this be approved. Do we have a motion to accept? Move to approve by Mr. Millsap, second by Ms. McCormick. Mr. Pinson, I'm so sorry. We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Planning Director comments.
Yes, I'll keep them very brief.
Hold on a second.
Okay. I'll keep them very brief. One update I wanted to give, we're getting closer with the Hendersonville Horizons Group, is getting closer to finalizing goals and objectives to submit to BOMA. We should have something soon, and they're going to have a working meeting with BOMA, and I'll make sure everybody's aware of when that meeting is. And once that gets a little finalized on the goals and objectives, we'll make sure to send out a copy of that to all of the planning commissioners. A couple other things I wanted to share. I wanted to congratulate Timothy Witten. He's been promoted to Assistant Planning Director, and we certainly appreciate his efforts. He's been with the Planning Commission and the Planning Department since 2002. He's now a certified planner, also a licensed landscape architect, and does a lot of really great things and has consistently. And so we're very excited about his new position and the new role he's going to play in the Planning Department. Also, I wanted to let you know that Suzanne Baker, our planner, has taken another position in Indiana to be near her family, and she's taken a great job, and she's going to be sorely missed. And we certainly appreciate the diligence and the hard work that she has given this commission and this community, and she's going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard to fill her shoes.
And on behalf of the commission, I want to congratulate Mr. Witten and say thank you to Suzanne for all of your hard work, and we certainly appreciate all that you've done. Thank you so much. Anything else?
That's it, Chairman.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved, second. We are adjourned.